There we go. Now it's going. Okay, this is
Okay, let me refresh mine. Episode 9.
episode 9. NSXPO and other things.
Everything
No
else
guests this week. Too
but the
tired.
kitchen sink.
Threw the kitchen sink at it. Alright.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Alright, so updated all that. That should be
Oh, there we
going.
go. I got the little notification already on my phone.
Cool.
Yeah, buddy.
Oh, there goes
Threw the
mine.
kitchen sink at
Throw it all. I'll take
it.
schedule with Sandy. Oh my
All right,
god. Oh
let me
man.
make sure you're muted. Yep. I'm actually going to watch just the YouTube this time because I have no one else to look at.
Yeah, that makes that makes it nice. I can actually fix that if we need to. I think
We'll
if
do
I
it next time. We'll
well
do it next time.
well you think that I can't do it now, but I'm pretty sure if I just do this, now you can see me
Oh, that's
because
nice.
I have two cameras now. Remember,
Yeah, it's so much better not having the lag.
right?
All right,
Well,
so essentially, we'll just have you watch the chat and you interrupt me if someone says something.
yeah, I think it'll be light 'cause I did not have time. So to the one person who's watching or the other two people that might have joined us, we're both very tired this week. So if it seems like our heart's not in it, it's not accurate. We really do want to do this all the time, so we're still doing it anyways. But that's why there's no background on the screen or anything like that because I literally just did not get around to doing anything. So
We both had rough, busy weeks.
this was a rough
So,
week. So I was at the racetrack essentially for NASA. Then I came home. I didn't think it through, and I unpacked my trailer, and then went to work that Monday, and then realized I had to pack my trailer again Tuesday because I had to be at the track Tuesday night for Wednesday and Thursday for NSXPO. So I was like, I wasted so much energy unloading everything, parking
I
everything,
can only
and then I woke
imagine.
up on Monday and I was like, oh my god, I completely boned myself and I was going to have to do it all over again. So I ended up doing, the whole thing, the car, everything, truck, everything twice. And then after that was all, then I still had to go put it all back again and go back to work Friday. And then Saturday we were working at NS Expo at SOS, so I had to load it all up a third time, and then
Oh my.
set it up, and then we got hit by that insane storm out here.
Oh, that's
So
right.
I actually, while I was at the show, I had to pack it up and unload it twice as well. So I think that let's count it again. So that's NASA's once, NS Expo the first time, then unloading after
Packing it
NS Expo,
to get
packing
it
up
ready
another,
for, yeah.
yeah, and then NS Expo the fourth time, fifth time, and sixth time while at the show. 6 times fully unloaded and loaded. 1 week.
In a week.
In 1 week. I've never
Yeah.
done that in my life. So that was an absolute. It was
It
too.
just
It was
sounded
too
like you
much. So
hated yourself
I,
that
I am
week.
I am drained. I am absolutely drained. I was lucky. Well, I was fortunate that we set up our shop. We had like nothing on the schedule. We had an MPO one in here, which I'll be making a video about that later. We customers gearbox got stuck in gear, so we had to get it off the trailer that way too, with the rear wheels stuck and it's like 3 inches off the ground. So we ended up putting furniture dollies under it and just dragging this thing off the ground. And then once we got into the parking lot, we we took the hubs apart and took the axles out so we could freewheel it into the shop because
Good
yeah.
call there.
No, I wasn't having any of that. I was like, I'll bring a tent out front, guys. We're doing it here. I'm not doing this. We're not trying to drag this through the dirt, dude. This thing, it doesn't weigh much, but it has a lot of grip, so it will just drag the ground along behind it. So
Right. And well,
that was
as I
Monday.
told Emily too. Yeah,
That was Monday.
that was yesterday, right? Well,
Uh, I don't actually know. That might have been last Monday. Honestly, I don't really know.
when that the NPO one showed up.
I think that was last Monday. That was in between of all the unpacking and packing of other things.
Oh, so it's even more fun, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, for me though, uh, it ended up to where I was the only person at my shop
Right.
the entire week. So we're Wednesday through Sunday because we need 2 days off and we want to work for the weekend warriors who work on their own stuff. And so Fred was sick Wednesday, and I was like, oh, okay, no big deal. Whatever. Fred gets sick sometimes. I get sick sometimes. It happens. And then he said that he wasn't going to be able to make it in Thursday, and I was like, all right, what's going on now? And then he found out that he had strep, mouth, hand, and foot disease
Oh my god.
at the same time.
Oh my god. That's poor Fred.
And so he got antivirals, and he got antibiotics. And of course, me knowing Fred for 12 years, and I gave him a whole bunch of shit and all that other stuff. But pardon my French. So I pretty much told him, I was like, well, however long it takes, you can just stay home. I don't want to have to get that as well. And so I planned on him not being there, but I still had all of the renters that we had the week. I still had, I think I did like 7 or 8 customer cars, axles, and keep yourself awake. Yeah, I had to do axles and hubs on a GMC. Puff, it's okay.
Hello, Pup.
Ariel went to go grab chips, and Puff is angry that
Puff.
she's not here. I don't know.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. It's okay, Puff. We're fine. The world is not near. Or
the end is not nigh.
One of those.
Not.
Yes.
The end is not nigh.
All of that.
All of it.
But yeah, so actually that one was really fun on Friday. So it came in, and I will say huge shout out to all of my customers. And I know Varavi probably has similar customers, but they all have been very understanding. And I told them, like, it's going to be slow. It's going to be a while. And they said, take your time. I want you to do it. I'm like, all right, cool. Fine with that.
Right. Well,
and yeah, so Friday was wonderful because I decided to work on this truck. I ordered in the axles and hubs, and it was an 07 GMC 4-wheel drive 1500, like Z71, whatever. And I take the axle apart, I take the hub off, and I'm doing this while I have renters and everything, and I also have members, so which means I also go and help them on their car when they need it. And it's 4:10, and I realized I ordered the axles and hubs for a 07 1500 Classic and not an 07 1500. And I was like, different. Oh my god, I have the hub and axle out of one side, and the truck is halfway in the shop because I didn't want to move the van taking up the truck lift. And so I call O'Reilly, and I was like, please tell me you have a hub and an axle for this side in your store. And they were like, we do. And I was like, please send it right now.
Oh my
They
god.
get to the shop at 4:25. I have, what is it? I have a renter there, and I can't remember what he was doing, but I think he was doing wheel bearings as well in his car. I finished a NB clutch slave, and I had to check that lady out, and then I had someone else show up in between that. And from 4:25, when everything showed up, to 5:01, I got the truck together, got the shop closed up, and I left at 5:01.
Jesus, that's
it was just one of those times, much. And I know it was. I don't know. Like every day I went home, and I'm getting a massage tomorrow. I took 2 more days off work. I'm like,
this is the honeymoon that never ends.
Pretty much, yeah. And yeah, so what was it? Sunday, you talking about the NPO one. I have a clutch job, right? And it was an XB, and it got towed in. And I was like, well, I want to start this, but if it needs to be pushed, I'm not starting this.
Right.
And so I hop in it, put it in gear, let the clutch out, doesn't move. I was like, okay, give it gas. It was like inching forward. And I was like, hell yeah. And I just drove it around the shop.
Dude, the MPO1, so we had all the suspension off, and all they're pretty straightforward-ish cars, you know. I mean, they're complex, but they're pretty straightforward at the same time. We had all the suspension off in like 3 hours, maybe 4. Derek killed it. But the under tray, so the engine, it's got 2 front mounts, like in one at the top engine, one, and then 2 at the bottom of the engine, essentially, that bolt to the frame, and then it has a rear mount that, or not really rear mounts, it bolts to the back of the frame with the rear mounts, but if you take the rear mounts out, it won't move. The engine's stationary. So we took all the rear stuff out, and we had the diffuser off. I might put a picture up later, but I had all the diffusers off and all that good stuff. And then there's one Loctited M5 bolt going through the underpan into this little brace that will block the transmission from going past it. 2.5 hours because the car is that far off the ground, mind you, because you can't put it on the air jacks to take the transmission out because the air jacks are bolted to the transmission. So we use the air jacks to get it up, and then we put like furniture dollies under the frame, under the inside the monocoque. There's a steel frame still that touches the floorboard. That if you put stuff under, it'll support it with load. I mean, that's the only way you can lift it. You can't really
like a Corvette floor box.
Yeah, kind of. You can't really. You can put it on a lift, but it's kind of like a Lotus where it's probably not a good idea just because of how much weight. If you take the tranny out, there's so much weight coming off the rear that it could tip forward. So we're doing it on the ground essentially. It's about like 6 or 7 inches off the ground. So Derek's there with get these Torx bits trying to get these stupid things out, and then it snaps off inside of there.
Torx as well.
Oh yeah, and then that snaps off inside there. And now he's got to drill that out with an angle drill bit, upside down, 3 inches off the ground. So finally we jack it up artificially again with the engine halfway hanging in the it was hours to get one M6 bolt out. Furniture dollies, Jim, are awesome. I love furniture dollies, and they're great for race cars because race cars don't have freaking jack points, which is absolutely annoying. So I have half of an MPO1 sitting in my shop because the other half is exploded everywhere across the entire room. The customer, his transmission got stuck into gear, and we recorded the whole thing because it was quite fun. It's a lot of fun to take it apart. And it makes a lot of sense for the most part. But what doesn't make sense is so there's the bell housing, and then there's the transmission. The bell housing actually holds some of the fluids, like the clutch fluid goes through it and all that good stuff. But other than that, nothing is in it. The transmission actually holds the engine oil and the tranny fluid because it's a dry sump. So it actually is a storage container in the transmission. So ideally, you would leave the bell housing attached to the car, and that would hold the engine front and rear because the bell housing is also the engine mount we talked about earlier. But someone's genius engineering idea was instead of using studs on the bottom two bolts, they use a nut and a bolt, and one of the bolts you can't get to without taking off the bell housing. And I'm like, this should have taken 25 minutes to just unbolt the gearbox and pull it back, but no, they had to put two bolts behind the bell housing, which required you take the bell housing off first to get to those two bolts to take the. Yeah, it's a sad ev, Jim. It's just but every other bolt was accessible except for the two, and all they had to do was put two studs there instead. I was like, why did you people think this was a great idea? Just put two studs in there.
Easier.
Yeah, so that cost an extra
you talked
2
about
hours.
The broken bolt reminded me Saturday. One of my renters was doing his ball joints, and it was on a Volkswagen, and it was one of the ball joints where it has a nylon locking nut instead of like a cotter key or anything, so it always spins the ball joint when you have to replace it. And then if they were like GMC or Chrysler, or I mean Chevy at any point, they would put like a 8 mil hex on top, so you just put a socket and call it a day.
Right.
But no, it's a German car, so it has to be an Allen key.
So you replace the controller. Replace the whole fucking thing.
I mean, yeah. So I told him, my whole thing with anything that strips, because obviously it's stripped, and anything that strips is I usually get if it's an Allen key, I'll try to get the size that's slightly bigger, and I'll try to hit it in with a hammer. That way the metal's already screwed, so now it takes up to it. Or if it's a nut, I will take a slightly smaller socket and beat it on with a hammer, and then I can usually get it. And so we tried that, but it was inside the knuckle, so it was in this little crevice, and you can't swing a hammer directly down on this little Allen key. So we tried, and it ended up stripping. So I told him, I was like, well, I can give you a torch, and you can try to melt the nylon so the nut will just come off. Or we can just weld stuff to it and then break it off or cut it off after you get everything off of the knuckle. And so we ended up welding it off, and that was while I was still fussing with all the other cars that I had. We also had someone, you're going to love this, Robbie. So we had one renter. He showed up at like 10:20 in the morning wanting to do lowering springs on his 18 Mustang.
Okay.
And lowering springs on an 18 Mustang calls for 7.7 hours.
6 or 7 hours, at least.
Yeah, because you got to drop the rear subframe
Right.
and all the other stuff, right? And so this young kid was going to do it, and I told him, and a lot of people don't know now, but within the past month, we've changed our after hours closing minutes for renters,
Okay.
um, which now each minute after 5 o'clock is $5.
Okay.
So essentially, if you stay an entire hour, it's $300 because we don't want to be there. We want to go home.
Right.
We've been there for 9 hours already.
We're
You
done.
should have taken care of whatever. Yeah.
We're done.
And so he finished at 4:58, which I was ecstatic about. I was
Yes.
like, awesome. I get to go home. But because I'm me, I started playing closing time.
Oh yes, of course. That's the way to go for
So-
me as well. I agree.
Yes. So as it started, like as it was like 4:55 or whatever, and I just went on YouTube and I hit closing time. There we go. And he looks up at me and I was like, "Hurry the fuck up."
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. But yeah, so as we covered our weeks, I know we have some NSX Expo stuff. If you want to get that before we get to our
Sure.
topics.
I actually wanted to show you a picture that I'm sure you've seen this someplace. This was present. Let's see if I can get this to pull up. Where'd it go? Let's get this up here. Is this pulling up yet? No. Of course not. Nothing's ever easy. I'm not ready.
No.
I'm not ready.
It's okay.
There it is.
Our week
That.
of,
Have you seen that? Have you ever seen that before? It's in pictures. This was so cool that Acura brought this out, and I actually have a video from how it got here too. So that is a completely bare, stripped, all the aluminum parts. It's a Targa top actually. It's got some cutouts. If you look on the frame, it shows how it's constructed. But that's been there's a picture out there on the internet that's been circulating for years of this chassis, and it looks like it's fake, but nope, it's real. There it is. I saw them wheel that into the hotel. I got a whole bunch of video of it too. It's incredible because you can, like, two people can pick that up, like two people my size.
Wow.
Like me and you, we could go pick that up and move it around. It's
So
incredible.
it's like 400 pounds.
368 pounds, I believe, with the
my
panels. That's literally that's what my car is with suspension on it and an engine in it.
That's so crazy.
So I thought that was really
That's
cool that
awesome,
they brought that out of wherever the heck they stashed that thing and trekked it all the way over to NSXPO. It was a pretty good event.
Yeah.
125 cars, I think, showed up for the actual event, and then 44 for the 44 or 45 for the track day, which is pretty good
That's
numbers
so
compared to
great.
last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually up for last year. Everybody said it was the best one they've ever had. We actually had a couple S2000s show up as well and drive with us, but it was pretty
That's
awesome.
awesome.
Podium Club's a good place. They took good care of us. No incidents. Somebody lost a rod bearing though. I don't know if you follow Lap of the World. Do you follow those guys? You might check it out. They're not a huge channel. They're 4,500 people or something like that. What's up, Robert Medina, Mr. Mexico? The Lap of the World is just they have these two NSXs. They drive literally everywhere. They've got I think the black one has 315,000 miles on it. The other one has like 160,000. The red one, it's a husband and wife, and they drive around in these things and they record all of it. It's really cool stuff actually. You should definitely give it a watch. It's called Lap of the World. Anyways, the higher mileage one went through turn 9, and I kind of warned everybody. I'm like, turn 9's pretty fast, so stock engines, 200 treadwear tires, just take it easy through there. And
Yeah.
he's a faster driver. He was going pretty quick through there, and it didn't. I bet you that's where it starved. He made it one session, then it had a light knock, so they parked it.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people when they're going to a track for the first time when in a street car, just run half a quart over.
Yeah,
It's not gonna hurt.
I don't even
It's
know if it was that
cheap
or
insurance.
I'm sure it might have helped at all, but from my experience on that turn, it's fast enough to pretty much starve anything. If you're going through the remotely fast at all, if you don't have an AccuSump and you're in a transverse platform, you're going to have a problem there. It's it's just really fast. I mean, I think the minimum speed I see is right around the low 80s, and the exit speed's 110 or so.
Oh wow, yeah.
So it just
That
catches
is
people out
a
of
lot
control.
of G's then.
Had a lot of broken rotors and stuff like that, but we kind of got screwed.
Yeah.
The weather definitely was 8 or 9 degrees hotter than it was supposed to be. So that was kind of rough. Hi, Gunner. Been trying to get Gunner to join us one of these days, but he's always too busy to hang out with us on here.
Not now.
No, not right now. Well, actually, he's probably pretty busy putting his G35 back together. He's got a lot of work to go there, Mister Gunner, transferring shells. But yeah. Anyways, so after we did the track day, I ended up camping there, and that's where that picture that I had up on the main loading screen there. Oh God,
Mhm.
I was looking. So Elder Black there is talking about me breaking rotors in NOLA 2016. So in 2016, at Robert, I hate to say this, was that the first time I met you? I think was there. I don't think I'd met you before then. But at NOLA, I exploded a rear rotor off the NSX while driving.
I remember that.
It fractured all the way from tip all the way to the center hub, so the wheel was loose when I came back in. It was scary, and I remember because I spent 6 hours on a lathe turning a front rear rotor into a rear rotor, and that rotor made it, I think, 3 laps. That custom-made 6-hour job made it 3 laps, but got me on my first podium with a GTA event, so that was kind of cool. But,
I remember that. That was...
Yeah. Robert, I'm glad you remembered that because
fun.
I forgot that's where I met you. I'm sorry. I've always just assumed you've been there because that's been so long now. It's been 6 years, so I just assume you're always there, Robert. I hope you're ready for Super Lap because we're getting ready. I did let someone else drive my car at NSXPO, and they had feedback. They're like, "This car is sorted." I'm like, "Wow, that's crazy," because I always feel like it's not. He's like, "This thing is," and I watched him. He was running away from Peter Cunningham, and Cunningham was in an NC1 Type S, and he was scooting away, and we were on the 320-ish horsepower tune, and you could see the straightaways. Peter would just edge in a little bit because on the straightaway the NC1s were hitting like 151, 152, and we were doing 136, 137, so lesser straightaway speed. So definitely a good chunk of power difference. 600 horsepower almost versus like 320. But then I'd watch in the back section, and he would just scoot back away, and that gap would just get bigger again. And there's two things: A, Peter's probably not pushing that car because it's not his car, but also the other guy wasn't pushing my car because it wasn't his car either. So like they looked really quite even, and then he unfortunately misjudged the brakes and just actually destroyed the front right tire on the car.
Oh.
So I had to order some new tires, but he paid for them. He's a chill guy. He's a really good guy. So, but it's cool to get his feedback though on what he thought of the car, and he had the same feedback I have, which is it needs a little more front spring because the turn-in's kind of slow. But once it locks in, it's perfect. So we'll probably make some changes based on his feedback too. But it was good to see someone else driving. And I posted up the lap actually on our YouTube. If you get bored, I'm posting up. I ended up taking this camera and the gimbal that I bought. I sat there. I basically just kept it with me the whole time, and I got like a terabyte of film.
Oh jeez.
So I'm trying to condense that down to like 20 minutes. I'm trying. It's not working well. Picking and choosing.
Well, that actually leads us into the first topic that I wanted to cover, which was let's pick one race mod you've done that you regret.
That I regret.
Yeah, something
which
you
car?
did where you were like, that was any of them. Just pick something at least for people watching. That way they can be like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do that.
For the Honda Challenge car, the mod I hated the most was actually doing the 5.0 final drive. I thought that was an absolute waste. It great torque multiplier, but I spent more time shifting than it was worth. So I actually preferred greatly the 4.7. The 4.7 I felt was more useful over more tracks anyways. The 5.0 I felt like was a very specific track orientated situation. Did not work at all tracks. But the 4.7 kind of works at all tracks. Obviously the 4.4 and the 4.2 do not. They're awful. But I think on the Integra that was probably the one thing I hated the most. I also didn't particularly care for the B16, but I'd rather have the B16 than I would the 5.0. On the NSX, that one's tough. On the NSX, I'd say something I wish I hadn't done is 2018, 2019, I ran a different splitter setup. Not the big one that actually came off the car. It was the one right before that. It had the bigger mouth, which was great for cooling, great for front end load, and the car always felt really much on the nose that way. But it actually it was really bad on the straightaways. It added so much drag on the front nose of the car that it was really, 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 really slow on the top end. So I ended up going back to the OEM bumper, and I picked up like 7 miles an hour immediately. It was like so I
Yeah, that's
yeah, that was after we ran it through CFD, and we could see it in the CFD data that it was going to cause a crap ton of drag. So, in theory it was supposed to, and then in reality it did. So that was a waste of a super lap battle with top end issues. But that has been resolved. I think those are the two things I mean, they were just experimental essentially. Everyone's like, oh, get the 5.0, and I didn't realize like the 5.0 just did not work with me. It was just so much shifting. And then obviously the splitter thing was a trial and error thing, and it was an error. How about you?
makes sense. So for me, with the CRX, the biggest one that comes to mind where I think it was a waste of time, and
Willwood.
granted, it didn't cost me much money, but the VTEC killer setup.
Ah, yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, not a ton into it, but yeah, there's no real gains either. I mean,
Right. Like so according to numbers, right?
yes,
According
great
to
numbers.
numbers, I gained. I went from 153 horsepower, which granted, before VTEC Killer we had it restricted, so
It made it to 153 horsepower at like 5,700 RPM, and then Tony over at UMS literally capped it all the way to 75.
Right.
and then when we went back with the VTEC Killer setup, it made 191, but it made 1 foot-pound less torque. And my only guess is because there was it didn't have the normal VTEC of that oomph at the lower end where they have smaller
So
lobes. And the other thing too is it's probably because of the A3 head, the K20
Sure.
A3 head, but it just lost everything after 7,000 RPM.
Huh. Interesting. That's not very
I,
fun.
I could rev it to 85.
Sounds
No,
awful.
and the only thing that wasn't completely terrible with it is that I have the longest K series 6-speed transmission with the O2 Type S. It's got a 4.3 final. But
yeah, it was just one of those things where I
thinking about it, and actually
earlier this week, before I knew that my week was going to be horrible, I ordered a new engine for the CRX. Because it was just one of those things where trying to make this A3 be competitive with everything else that I'm trying to do, I just don't see it. And I see it being much more of a fight than just getting, because I ordered a JDM 3-lobe VTEC TSX K24A.
Right.
I'm going to throw that in, and I've been talking with Gabe and everything, and we're probably going to get some Honda Challenge stuff going either late this year or early next year. And judging by what we're looking at, I'll be able to be 215 horsepower at my weight, which, if you know the K24, like the JDM K24As, you can be like, oh, it's, what is it?
232, easy.
Jake put 224, 226 to the wheels, and then Gabe put 230 like a few weeks ago.
Ortega?
To the wheels. Yeah.
Isn't he? Is there a K24 in that Civic now?
The gray one that was his turbo car?
Yeah, the one that was John and I were fielding
that
with
is
the B
a
series.
K24 now.
So how many Honda Challenge cars are not being talked about that exist right now that are going to show up at AMP?
So right now, according to Gabe, what will show up at AMP and what is actually scheduled to show up at AMP, according to the people, is 3 total.
Okay, we got him. Who else?
Jake.
Cooper?
From ST4.
Okay, Cooper's going to run.
And then I can't remember who Gabe said the fourth guy was, or the third guy. I'll be the fourth
everybody's
guy when I
going to
make
podium.
it out. Right? But yeah, so he was talking about that, and he sent out the the new rules that we're going to go with. But
whatever happened to Eric Wood?
I don't know. I last time I saw him was 16, 17.
It's been a long time. I know the car didn't get wrecked or anything. He just, that season he was just gone after that.
Yeah. So back to the VTech killer. VTech
Yeah.
killer pretty much made me like regret that, and I was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm gonna go K24. I already can't lower my car too much because of the dreadnoughts.
Right.
Um, well, they're as low as the dreadnoughts will allow me to go, but because they go in the bottom of the strut,
Right.
I lost like that much drop. Um, and then the second biggest mod that I actually regretted, which is funny, was coilovers in my SW20.
Okay. Well, let's
And
explain.
the reason being is because my SW20 was, as I found out, a very rare SW20, being that it was the turbo model.
Yeah.
It had T-tops, the glass T-tops and everything, but it didn't have cruise control. It didn't have an LSD. And not having the LSD is actually what made the coilovers a worse upgrade over the stock blown
Right. So
struts.
they would lift the fucking wheels up, huh?
Correct.
Yeah. So
It
when
would
you corner, it would
make the
spring
open
rate.
diff show itself.
It was one tire
Where
fire
the
that
OEM
puppy.
suspension,
Oh man.
I could actually drive through stuff. So after I did that, I started realizing, I was like, wow, I have to like go slow now because I'll just spin.
Oh man.
That was definitely a thing
So
that pulled it away.
when you first were saying rare, I was wondering, and then I was thinking in my head, I'm like, this seems like it's rare because it was a bad idea rare, not because
Yeah, no, it was
no
it's
LSD,
rare because it
no
didn't
cruise
have
control.
any of the stuff. Like, like when I remember I went to hang out with a bunch of MR2 people or whatever, and we were talking about the cars, and they were complaining about stuff, and I was like, I really wish this one just had cruise control. And they would looked at me and they went,
Hmm?
what do you mean it doesn't have cruise control?
cruise?
And I was
What are
like,
you
come
talking
look, there's literally nothing in the car. There's no button, there's no wiring, there's no little module back by the engine. I was like, it doesn't have it. And they're like, that's odd. And I was like, yeah, tell me about it. Whoever bought that car was like, how can I get the turbo the cheapest? And that's what I ended up with.
Could you take any other options off this? Yes. No
Yeah.
gas pedal.
Can we
Excellent.
exactly. Can you take the gas out of the car before delivery?
No brake pads. I'll
Actually,
put my own
in the 90s, that probably wasn't that bad.
Yeah, no. I think when I started driving in, I think I got my permit in the late '90s, and I think I paid. I think by the first time I filled up for gas, I think it was 87 cents a gallon.
I remember.
I think the Integra was like.
It was,
I think it was like $13 to fill the Integra up
yeah,
with
that
premium.
would be wonderful.
Oh
That
my
would be
God.
wonderful.
It'd be like
I remember
$60 to drive to Texas.
Yeah, I remember 98.99 cents around the time I started driving, and then I also remember when it got to $2, and I was extremely mad.
Oh, I know.
I was
The
like,
first time it hit $2.
this is some
it was like-
BS right now.
Yeah, no. It's something that I guess we're just gonna deal with. I've pointed it out for years. I lived overseas, and gas has always been about $8 a gallon. Every place else in the world I've ever lived, it's always been that way. It's very much subsidized here, but we're so used to it. It's like, holy crap! Just seeing it creep to even 50% of what the rest of the world pays is still painful, you know.
Yeah, no, fair. I was like, everybody else just, I would like to pay less.
They're like, you're only
really
paying
it. That's all I
$4.
care.
Let them coming down over, you know. Well, to be fair,
Right.
so
Or
you know
like
what's
today,
interesting?
I paid
What is
$3.50.
what is the price down there now? Because I've noticed it is cheaper everywhere but Phoenix.
Oh no! Like actually, Casa Grande. What was it? A friend of mine, Johnny Carr. Tucson was $1.75 cheaper than Casa Grande.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
Casa
and then
Grande was
I went to-
$5 for 87.
Yep.
And when he posted that, the gas station not too far from my shop was $3.25.
I went to Payson, and Payson was $1 cheaper than Phoenix too. So I'm not sure what's going on up here. Why we're still getting gouged in literally every other city in Arizona is like, it's fine.
Well, it's because they can, and it doesn't like. That's the other
Honestly,
thing people
yes.
talk about, like gas prices, or they like. My favorite is seeing these things about like, oh, don't buy gas on this day, and I'm like, you're not hurting anyone, and they're not going to care, because no matter what, you're going to make up for you not getting gas the next day. Like,
It's not
Anyways.
worth, obviously it's not worth complaining over. It is what it is, and like I said, we're gonna keep spending it. It doesn't really matter at that end of the day. It's just and if you look at the whole year, spending double on gas doesn't really affect me that much. It sucks on a week to week basis, but I'm talking about 1,000 versus 2,000, so it is what it is.
All right.
I've modified my driving behavior a ton in the sense that I rarely drive a car to work anymore, which I've been riding my bike anyways, but I think I've seen a few more bikes traveling now up in Phoenix. I've seen more riders out. A, it's getting nicer out, but B, yeah, I think I spend about I think I'm spending about $30 a month on gas right now, which is usually half a tank in any of the vehicles. So
Yeah.
being
No, I
able to cruise around
remember
the bike helps a lot.
the last time we had all the crazy stuff where it was like $4 to $5, whatever, 10 years ago almost, whatever it was.
Right.
Um, I didn't live very far from where I worked, and so I rode a Ruckus everywhere.
Oh, okay.
Which the Ruckus, granted, mine was modified so it could do 47.
Ooh, spicy.
Right?
Dangerous.
But doing 47
miles an hour, floored everywhere. I got 115 miles per gallon.
See, I get
So
42 if I do.
week.
I get 42 if I'm
Right.
lucky on that.
I would drive a week
Yeah.
to back and forth to work and everything for $4.20 or whatever it was to fill that tank.
So I don't. Have you been up to the shop ever, Brendan?
Yeah, no, I went up. I went up when we did the whatever thingy
The whatever
that
thing.
never happened at COVID.
Nacho party?
No, it was the where we talked with the drifter guy and we had to pretend like we were going to be rude to people and
yes,
all that stuff.
Ah, yes. Did we didn't have the second side of the shop open yet though, did we? It was just the one.
You
half.
showed me it,
and it was still rough.
So, did I show you the upstairs room that I'm in right now?
You might have, but it definitely didn't look like a room then.
This is this place has a full kitchen in here. Actually, this is what I find this kind of. I know. So, I'll just.
Speaking of which, last week when Fred got sick, before he got sick, and
it's a full-on freaking apartment up here, dude. So I've got all that up here, and then actually the other direction.
Look at that.
I know. And then through that
room.
If
I did that, Fred would never leave the shop.
Well, that's the danger, Noodles. Inside that room, that thing's fully. There's enough room to put a full apartment in that room. It's like a 15 by 18 foot room. So yeah, it's always tempting not to leave this place, but.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was going to what's it called? I was going to bring my air fryer to the shop because Fred likes the grills, and I was like, you know what? Air fryer would be easier.
Chris Davison's on our stream there. And Chris, I've got your radiator will be here, I think, Thursday. And some brake pads for you. So easy peasy. But like I said, the guy. So I actually there was a tenant in this suite before or when I moved in, and the tenant that was here, he was a nice kid, but somehow he was not able to pay his rent on this place. And he always had like 20 or 30 cars parked all over the place, down the alley. And I was like, the rent here is not that expensive. Like I think he was paying like maybe $2,000 a month. Plus he lived here, so he didn't have a house payment someplace else. He lived here, and he had the ability to make income here. He had 2 lifts. I'm like, how the crap do you not pay your $2,000 rent? I don't understand. Yeah. So he ended up getting 3 months behind on his rent, and I asked the landlord, I'm like, you okay with that whole situation over there? Because that parking mess alone is a pain in my ass, and I've got customers I'm trying to help here, and I've got him parking in my parking spaces all the time that I have to keep chasing him out, or his family will come over and they'll just leave their cars and they all take off and leave. So yeah, what ended up happening, the landlord just gave him, he's like, you got 30 days to catch up or you're out, and he ended up just being out. So left a lift behind.
I mean, it worked out, it seems, because I remember looking
over there, and it was definitely a good spot.
It's a much bigger space than the other side. So we've actually moved most of our operations to this side. We don't really do anything on the other side. I think I have my rack over there, which we use for like oil changes and stuff.
Other than like shipping and stuff like that?
No. So shipping's still on. Actually, it's on this side too, in the little office that was to the left. But the other side, we took the lift out, moved the good lift over to this side. We got rid of one of the older lifts. The landlord bought it, and then we're planning on blowing that wall out and making more retail space. But and I'm probably just gonna park my freaking car in the middle of the showroom just so I can store it there and put shelves up around it. It'll hurt you before it hurts anything else. Buttonwillow. I'm not coming to Buttonwillow Finals. I hate that freaking track, Mr. Black. It's not happening. I might come cheerlead a little bit, but I'm definitely not. I'm not gonna be there trying to destroy my car again before Super Lap Battle. That track just Buttonwillow just doesn't entice me. Like I'm never in the mood. I never really care about that place. The consequences are insanely high. There's nothing to gain. So I'd much rather save the car for something that I'd rather do a local event with my friends and buddies here. And since I'm going to see everybody from there at a Super Lap anyways, there's no point of going.
Fair.
Yeah, see, you don't want to
Well,
destroy your Canadian car. I don't think anybody should destroy their car at Buttonwillow. It's not
Yeah.
worth it. It's not like smashing a wall at Road Atlanta where you're like, well, I lost it and I just ping ponged down the straightaway. No, you're like I hit a little hill and it totaled my car. That's what Buttonwillow is. I hit a
Yeah.
3-inch pile of dirt and my car is totaled. It's totally different. I
Well,
would have crashed
so
at Long
the,
Beach. That would have been fine.
the next topic that I think will be fun, which is when buying a car, what do you pay attention to?
I haven't bought a car in forever.
Because
When's
like
the last
the
time
other
I
thing
bought
too
a
is
car?
like fair, but when you're a mechanic, like when you're we'll say mechanically inclined and you know how to
PPI-wise,
work on a car, stuff is not there's certain things that don't bother you when
Sure.
other people would be bothered.
So with a typical PPI, I actually, this one sounds dumb, but I usually, because you obviously never know what you're getting. Like, you really don't. Whatever's inside that engine, you really don't know unless you pull a freaking valve cover off and look inside there. You look at the oil cap and see if it's gummy or stuff. You can do that kind of stuff. But I strongly believe that the cleanliness of the interior of the vehicle tells me how much the owner cared about the vehicle. So if the interior is trashed, that means there's probably zero effort on the rest of the car. So that's my number one thing. If the interior is clean, and I don't mean like armor-alled. I mean like it's been vacuumed. There's no coffee stains on everything, and there's not old food up under the dash smelling and rotting and taking it to a freaking
Yeah, no
shop.
burgers.
No burgers. That car's still here. I still got to deal with that.
Oh
shit.
no.
I gotta comp test that thing still, man. I haven't had any energy for that. But yeah, I look at the interior if it's nice and clean. Then under the hood, I don't like to see a spotless interior that's got armor all in it. I like to see a little bit of dirt, like not crusty, but just like a nice sheen of dirt that tells you that it hasn't
No,
been
when you
shined
pull it
up.
up and it's just slightly dusty,
Yeah.
and then you can tell there's no oil stains. There's no
one's
grime
been
built up.
shining this thing up for me. So I'll do
And
that.
I will say, so the big thing about what Robbie was saying, where like so you say an engine bay is like all detailed, like you would be at a dealership, where it's all nice and shiny and everything spotless and everything. I used to do that for selling cars because the majority of people see that and go,
Ooh.
"Yay!" And I remember I sold a car, and granted, the paint was all faded. It was a Civic. I bought it for a flip car, but when I bought the car, the engine had rod knock. The car had been thrown up on, and the interior was what Ravi was describing as you don't want, right? So, but I bought the car for $400, and back then a new engine was like $50. So, fine, I have no problem paying for it. But I cleaned up everything, and I went to sell the car, and they popped the hood, and they saw it being all shiny because I had replaced everything and then put trim shine on it, and they went, "Wow, you can tell the owner really cared about this car." It's like, well, you say that.
Funny you should mention that. I don't care at all.
Yeah, I'm like, I just want it gone, and I put the cheapest engine I could find for it, and we're done. But they think it's wonderful, and yeah, like Robbie said, I love seeing an engine bay where you pop the hood, and it's just got a nice coat of dust over everything.
It's a really weird thing. Like I said, it's just it looks new to people, so people jump all over. But for me, I'm like that usually is the biggest heads up that someone's cleaned it and covering something up. And then obviously checking the coolant level, oil levels, all those basics. Depending on the kind of vehicle, I typically am buying 90s cars, so I'm asking about
Puff.
timing belt records. Oh, hi, Puff. I'm gonna bring
She
Mouse
walked
next
over
time.
She walked over the cord for my my little spotlight,
Oh no.
and it fell. Yeah, I know, it's okay.
Can we? Come on, Puff. How big is Puff? Get up there.
Puff is 30. Come here, Puff.
30 pounds.
She is roughly. She's like 27. She's gonna be 2 next week. Oh,
Dang.
come here.
So Chris,
And
yeah,
as a
a lot
corgi,
of
she's
times
super
when it's-
long.
A lot of times when it's dusty and no one's been in there for a bit, that can be good or bad, but at least I can see what they have done. You can see
Yeah.
what's new and what's not.
There,
It's
nothing's
when
been
it's
covered up
yeah,
yet.
when it's covered with a bunch of shellac, it's hard to tell. Let's see, Mr. Black says, one day I bought a car for the wheel-to-wheel racing. While assembling it, the dashboard, I found a half a kilo of white powder behind it. So funny you should mention that. My Integro had about 2 pounds of weed in it when I bought it, and I bought it from the police auction too. So that was absolutely hilarious. I
Even
took it
better.
back to them like, this thing smells really funky, and they're like, oh yeah, there's still drugs in there. We fucked them. I'm like, yeah, well
Yeah.
thanks a lot. I could have been pulled
You
over for
know,
this stuff, and that was not legal back then. So.
right. Well, I mean, even 2 pounds now
Two
is not
pounds is
legal.
still a lot of weed.
Yeah. But what was it? There was one Fred would detail cars for people after they bought them, and a friend of ours bought an Evo, and he went to detail it, and there was a like really bad black staining on the ceiling or the roof lining.
Okay.
And while he was pulling everything out, he pulled out the little like change drawer, the cigarette thing, right? He pulled that out, and behind it was crumpled up aluminum foil.
Is there meth in there? Are you
And
messing
so he
around?
pulled it out, and there was just like this black tarry thingy,
Oh,
and so it got known as the Black Tar Evo.
the Black
Uh,
Tar Evo.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. So that would have been a telltale sign if you look at the interior and the top of it looks like there's been smoke signals sent out of the car. But yeah, so as like another thing that I look for, like it's the other thing too, like oil leaks don't really bother me.
No, because oil
More
leaks are
so, I
resolvable.
look. Oh yeah, easy. They're wonderful.
I mean, I try to
the
avoid
big
rear
thing
main
that
seals. I try to, like, if it's got a rear main seal,
Yeah,
like, I'm lazy. I don't want to deal with that, but I know it's there
it
at least.
depends on the car for me. If it's a Miata,
Yeah,
whatever.
Miata's no big deal. I
if
actually
it's front
rather.
wheel drive, probably not.
Yeah, see, front wheel drive. I was gonna say, I like anything rear wheel drive for the most part. I like whatever that's easy to deal with. But the anything that's got a subframe, like I hate doing the newer Civics, dude. Like was it the 11s and up? Those are just awful with that stupid heavy subframe and the electric power steering that's all bolted to it. It's even with we use a trans jack with them, and it still takes 2 people at least. They're just
Oh
so
yeah,
heavy.
definitely. What was it? I did that that subframe that I told you about the other week, where I had a horrible time getting that too, putting on the lid, and then they had the wrong one, and I had to go to different junkyards and stuff like that. It was bad. But that one was even more so because there wasn't an engine mount to the chassis.
Okay.
Only engine mounts on the subframe.
Oof. So yeah, usually you have the two that hang up, left and right that hang on the chassis.
Yeah, so you can
and then
just
the front
unbolt it and then it stays,
Right.
and then you take it apart. Yeah, easy peasy.
The Civic doesn't have that. Well, the Civic does have that, but if you're pulling the trans out, that's one of them. So we usually end up having to stick a one-man stand under the oil pan, and then you have one
but
mount
you can
holding
get the subframe out, all
Yeah.
that stuff. We're like, for us, we had to do the frame thing where it holds it
on
from
the
up top.
Yeah.
Yeah, but because it, whoever was designing this thing decided that they wanted to make their own, there wasn't easy places to put it.
Yeah, the
So
newer
we had
Civics,
to-
the shock towers are so far into the dash that frame tool doesn't work that well, unfortunately, anymore. So I mean, there's nothing there on the fender to really work with. I've been looking. They make a special one, and we've been doing so many of those. I've been thinking about grabbing one because it would make it a lot easier not to have the trans jack in the way.
Right.
But
yeah, what's another thing? So what I was saying, like, the oil leaks, they don't really bother me.
Right.
Pick and choose kind of. The big thing that I look for is I actually look at like pinch welds and weld seams, because I always want to know where this has been crashed. Because my favorite story is people like, oh, it's a one-owner car, it's never been painted, and then I look at something and I go,
y'all should have
the door
it.
doesn't match the fender. I was like, you can't tell me it hasn't been painted. Oh no, it's been like. I'm like, no.
It's
I've seen cars come from the dealership, right? I've seen cars come from the dealership with like tiger striping because the computer couldn't do the metallic properly, but it was even across the front to the back of the car.
The whole side's been tiger striped. It's fine.
Yeah.
We had a guy come in with a. Oh man, we had a guy come in with a newer Civic Type R that apparently he got it back from the body shop, and he said he curbed it lightly or something like that, and it was on the right rear, and he was just trying to figure out why it came from Penske, so it was good. Penske is a very reputable body shop, and they do it the best they can. They're if it's not doable, it's not doable. But also,
well, the other body shops will do what you ask them to do as
correct.
well.
So I started sniffing out this situation because he brought it in. I measured all the corners. Sure enough, it's 3/4 of an inch higher on the back right, and it's not on coilovers. You would never notice if you weren't really paying attention, Like it was because those things have big wheels, so you can't really. It hides a lot of the sizing offsets. But so we got under there. I measured everything, and you could see that all the right rear had been replaced. Had new hubs, new control arms, new trailing arm. So clearly, it's been on this corner. The subframe didn't look like it shifted, and if it did, it shifted so minimally that it didn't leave a mark anywhere. So I was like, "Well, do you have any pictures of before?" And he's like, "Oh no." I'm like, "Oh no, you don't have any pictures at all? No pictures." So
You sure?
you sure? So he finally finds some of just that corner, which tells me that there's probably more that he didn't have any intention of me seeing. So he happened to have the invoice in the car, and I looked at the invoice, and I'm like, well, it's got all this right side front parts as well. And I looked under the car, and you can see the new right control arm, new upper, new shock, and then I looked even further, and it's like new bumper cover, new bumper beam.
It's never good to lie to your doctor or your mechanic.
So I was like, and then I looked at the total, and then I'm like, so this is like it's like $9,000 in damage that he just curbed the wheel, and he's asking why it's bent. I'm like, because his car should have been totaled. There's no way you just curbed this car. It was something big got hit because every panel and every suspension component on the right side of this car has been replaced. And he's like, oh, I don't know why they did that. I don't know. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense that they replaced the front bumper and the front bumper cover, and you don't know why.
Yeah.
I'm just confused as why you don't know why. Wouldn't you ask questions? Because this wasn't an insurance job either. It was paid cash.
Yeah, the last time I paid $9,000, I wanted to know where it all went.
If every time I've spent more than about $1,000, I'm pretty sure what I bought, or it was a lot of alcohol.
Then you don't remember.
And that was Vegas. It was awful.
Fair.
Never again.
Well, you remember my picture I shared on Sunday of the radiator hose?
Yes. The BMW.
So that one was
the quick
fun.
Disconnect on the. Was it a BMW? You said it was.
So the BMW where you just put a flathead in and lift it up, and then you can.
And
pull
they had
it
a
off,
hose
right?
clamp on there, right?
Correct, because that'll
tighten up the plastic. Yep. Makes a good seal.
So that one was fun too. Speaking of the don't lie to your mechanic, where it came in, he told me that it was leaking coolant, and he told me that it had no coolant in it, and I was like, okay, so how hot did it get? And he's like, oh, I got home, pulled into the driveway, the light came on, and I turned it off, and I was like, okay. We'll just have to keep an eye on it after we do it.
Right.
That'll be fine. And then I get under it, and I see that line. And I was like, this isn't just something that happened and then you towed it to a shop.
Try to get away with it.
This is something that happened somewhere.
Right.
You tried to fix it, and then you tried to put more water in it. And so I fixed it. I took it apart and clicked it the way that it's supposed to be, and it went on fine.
Yeah.
Granted, it still needs to be replaced because of that little plastic thing is not the greatest. But I plugged it in, and I was like, well, let me see if there's any leaks before I just call that one good and replace it, and then there's something else. So I start looking at it, and it just starts pouring out as soon as I get it up in the reservoir. And I was like, what the? But it wasn't pouring out from that hose. That hose was dry.
It's further up.
It wasn't under pressure, but it was further up. And then I realized the upper hose is leaking. And I was like, oh God, did this get hot enough to melt the radiator where it clips on? And so I was like, all right, let me pry this off. So I pry it off, pull the hose back. I look in there, and there's this weird whitish gray gunk over the
RTD.
inside of the entire. Reminded me of Blue Devil.
Oh.
Oh no!
Oh no! The gift that keeps on giving.
Right, and so
I finally talked to the kid before I got everything together, just because I was
trying to piece stuff together. And he said that he bought the car for $500, and then immediately after purchasing it, proceeded to a parking lot garage and did donuts for 3 hours straight. And I was like, bro. And so I tried to call him after I pieced everything together, but I was like, all right, so this is going to be a trial. But so Blue Devil is a head gasket repair hope in a bottle. And hope
Liquid
is
mechanical
emphasized with that.
fixes. Liquid fixes for mechanical
So
problems.
yes, so Blue Devil, it seals any little leaks. Which, if you don't know, at a lot of times in the running of an engine, the thermostat is a little leak, and I've seen it clog the thermostat and then cause the car to overheat even worse. And now your head gasket is now an engine.
Oh my god.
Liquid prayers, Matt says. Perfect. So I'm waiting for him to know that his $500 car needs 2 hoses and a coolant flush for $412. And then it still might need an engine.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if he would have just told me this story beforehand, I would have done a little bit quicker investigation because I've been like, all right, let me not trust any of this.
Right.
And
Well, it's just
look
so
at
much
it
easier
more
to be
than-
honest with whoever's having to work. Because the more information you provide us, the easier it is for us, and the less we charge you, and the less
and
headaches
the
it is.
faster.
And the faster
Yeah.
it's head. Today I had one dropped off that had a leak, a coolant leak, and they couldn't tell me exactly how long, and then it's been a while because the plastic upper hose receiver got so hot and it's gotten brittle. Like we touched it, it just shattered. It was so hot. It's been that way. It's an FA engine too, so I have no idea if the head gasket survived. I haven't actually seen a blown FA like NA before, so this is like a 2.5. It's not a WRX or anything. But
You know, I had one. This was actually, so if you don't want to like give too much information or whatever, one thing that I recommend for people is when your car goes wrong or something like that, don't assume on anything. Just go, car went boom, please fix.
yes, that makes it so much
And
easier. So we
then
just start at square
yeah,
one.
the mechanic doesn't. You just, all right, look at everything. We got this. Look at codes, whatever, right? And so we had one customer who kind of did that, and he came in and he said that it had what was it? He said that it had an emissions code or it was a gas cap code or whatever. And I was like, all right, and I pull it up, and it showed, you know, gross leak, whatever. And then it also said P0128, which is a coolant temperature code,
Like a ECT
saying the
max.
coolant wasn't hot enough or whatever. Yeah,
Right, one or the other.
and so I was like, okay, well, I'm looking at the 2 codes. I'm going to have to clear them. Let me just see what this one might be. And so I look at the code, or I was like, well, let me just make sure there's some coolant in this. And so I take the cap off, and there's all kinds of weird crust on the cap. And I was like, okay, hold on. And I grab the upper hose and I squeeze, and it goes, and I was like, oh God. And so I went and got Fred so that, yeah. So I went and got Fred, and we ended up doing we actually have a video on the U-Wrench about it, but we ended up doing one of the Prestone coolant flushes with it twice.
Yeah.
And there was literal like mud sludge the first time I took the lower hose off to get the rest of it out. And oh my God, after that, no code. It still didn't leak anything. It was great, but it was just one of those things like any of those little codes. And the other thing too, so buying a car, right? If I get in a car and I bring a
Scanner.
a code reader and it says 1 mile since reset, which it does say, you can actually see that. I go, all right, what's wrong with this? Or like 0 miles since last mill reset, and you're
the fun ones are like I have the Solus, you know, the big snap-on Solus, and it'll tell me what they cleared too. It'll say, oh, these were cleared last time. You're like,
good try.
Nice try, fam.
I know we're close to the end, but I do have one awesome story from years ago. I went to go look at a CRX, and I saw the pictures of the CRX. They were asking like $1,300 or whatever for it, and looking at the pictures before I went to look at the car, I had talked them down to $750.
Okay.
So hadn't looked at it, hadn't done anything. I just like looking at the pictures. I was like, all right, just to let you know, before I come to look at the car, this is where I'm at. And they were like, okay, well, I want you to look at the car. And I was like, all right, cool. So they pull up.
It
I get there
drives.
before them. Yes.
Wow.
Well, granted, no, this was 13.
Okay. So a driving
So
CRX for 750 is actually really not that unreasonable back
no,
then.
that's like about where they were, especially with how rough this one was. And so they show up after I did, and when they show up, I saw something behind it, but it was nighttime. So I was like, okay, I'll just keep it going, right? And then they show up and they turned it off. Which, if you're ever going to buy a used car, leave it running. Do not. And if the owner says that they don't want to leave it running, probably shouldn't buy it, because any car should at any point in time be able to idle indefinitely without a problem.
Right.
And so
Unless
he
you have a
turned it
Subaru.
off, and I was like, "Oh, I want to just turn it on." So I turned it like, well, yeah. So I turned it on, and then it's sitting there running, and I'm looking at it and everything like that, and then it starts smoking white.
Excellent.
And I bring out my flashlight and I look at it to make sure it's not blue. And so I was like, "Well, it's white." And I was like, "Well, bro, you know what? I just don't want it." And so instead of like trying to even lowball him anymore, I was just like, "I want to pass. I want to call it good. Like, this just leave, and
Yeah.
nobody's angry, and we're just done, right?" And so I leave, and then I told him that I leave, and he texts me angry or whatever, and I was like, "Bro, it has a bad head gasket. I don't want it." And then he texts me really angry, like in all caps, and he said, "It doesn't have a blown head gasket. White smoke is burning coolant." And I was like, please tell me how that happens
Wait,
without a
this
blown
is
head
a steam
gasket.
engine?
I'd love, right? You're like, I mean, did it? I don't know. Did you or Dremel the ports too big when you were porting the head or something? I don't know. It was one of those things where I just couldn't believe what I read. It was, I don't know. Definitely a lot of red flags on that one.
I don't think I've actually bought that many used cars. So I mean, so the NSX I bought sight unseen. The second NSX, sight unseen. The third NSX, it was on a trailer, so I knew what I was getting. And then the last NSX was just a random flip. But the Integra, I didn't even know how to drive sticks. Funny stuff, my mom actually drove that car home. I had that for 16 years. The 240SX I bought had a rod knock when I bought it, so I got it for $1,500. So I knew what happened there. BMW, I bought what are the E39 M5s or whatever. That car smelled like cow, so I got rid of it. It ran perfectly fine, but it smelled like leather. It smelled like it had been freshly upholstered with like leather that just got peeled off.
You know
the
what
cow.
made me sell my BMW?
Was it the BMW?
In manual. That was definitely a good part of it, but it was literally because I will say they are not the ultimate driving machine, but on their manuals they have a bleed off valve for the clutch. So if you
sidestep the clutch pedal, it'll bleed evenly.
Oh.
And it's because BMW knows that people who own BMWs can't drive.
That's true.
And so they want to make sure that they don't stall the car.
Is there a bleed-off valve on the turn signals too?
No, those valves just don't come with the car.
Those
you have
are
to
optional.
buy them extra.
So I had the BMW, which actually ran flawless. There was nothing wrong with that car, but I ended up hating it absolutely so much because it smelled like cows. And I traded it for my RX-7 straight across. I'm like, I'll take that FD. Take this fucking piece of crap BMW. It's yours. I don't want it. So I did that, and I don't remember where the Skylines fell into all that. There was a bunch of Skylines in there someplace. The one in Scottsdale. I'm not sure what we're talking about right now, Randall. I'm lost. I'm too tired to really know what's happening. But yeah,
No
I don't think I bought the truck, but that again was a pretty known variable. I don't think I've actually purchased a vehicle that was risky ever. Everything I've ever bought is like very known. I bought them blown up or destroyed because that's what I wanted. I wanted something that was going to change dramatically. I know. I think
had a bunch of them.
I bought the bikes. I bought both of the two of the bikes new, two of them used. But again, low mileage. There's nothing really to be worried about. Hi, Ariel.
Yeah, no, she picked up Puff, and she's not supposed to pick up more than 10 pounds.
Hey, stop picking up
Yeah,
Puff.
flying Puff.
That's
Yeah.
3 times the.
Stop picking up Puff.
Yeah, stop it.
Yeah, put her down.
But she's so cute.
She is cute, but she's heavier than you need to be picking up. All right. Well, I know we had 3 things scheduled today.
We'll schedule the next
we
one for
didn't
next
get to it.
time. Let's So I'm gonna try to get let's try to get Brian back on next week since we had missed out on him.
I'm okay with
a
that.
week ago. So we'll grab him on there. I think Coyote wanted to jump back in too, so we could have we'll make up for it next week.
Yeah, we'll have two guests next week instead of none this week.
Yes. Well, my guest up there was very kind of us to join us.
Oh,
That's you.
yeah. I'm a horrible guest though.
Yeah, we are bad guests. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate you guys for hanging out with us for this last hour, and we will see you guys in a week. And hopefully Brian from Hassport will join us now that he's feeling better. All right, guys. Have a good night.
We'll see ya. All the little pitter patter. Yeah, Puff, we know you're here.
Oh, boy.